Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to Writer Tips and Feedback. I am Samantha Wright. I am a writer, a hobbyist photographer, and a wife. As you can tell from the title of this video, we're going to be talking about our glorious villains. Now, I have to honestly say, I'm slightly over the evil villains, because in a more realistic world, villains aren't these purely evil beings. They're basically just someone who has very different goals than the protagonist, and a lot of the times their goals get in the way of the protagonist's goals. That alone makes them the villain within a story. Not necessarily the fact that they're just evil and out to do evil and malicious things. So this video is pretty much just explaining why I feel this way and explaining why using more realistic villains can make your characters more relatable. You could even have people rooting or at least sympathizing with your villain. And I think that is a tremendous accomplishment on the writer's end. If you can make your readers sympathize with someone they're supposed to hate, someone who is causing a lot of crap to happen to your protagonist, that is a huge win, and I think you should be applauded if you can do that. It's more likely to grab a reader if the villain is more relatable, and most of us aren't purely evil. Unless there's some insanely amazing actors out there, most people are pretty civilized out in public and in society. The villain has to have a why as to why they are against the protagonist, or at least why they are the way they are. Everyone has a story, and we're all a product of our upbringing and the traumas and the positive things that have happened to us. We all have a reason as to why we act the way we do, or the way we say the things we do, or the mindset and the thought processes we have. These are all products of our upbringing. The characters all have to have reasoning behind their actions and the way they feel, the antagonist included. Let's take a look at the Phantom of the Opera and look at the Phantom. He was basically the villain of the movie. The Phantom was not necessarily evil. He was just a hopeless romantic who definitely was a little obsessed with Christine, which was a little bit unhealthy. But nonetheless, he loved her, he wanted to be with her, and he was coaching her to sing and all that good stuff. He felt he was justified in murdering somebody when Christine did not get the spotlight in the opera. To everyone else and the viewers of this movie, of course he was the villain, but we also have to remember how he was brought up. He was some circus freak, and he was getting beat on, and then he lived his life in the bowels of this opera house. So the whole point of bringing this up is to explain how even though he was pretty much stalking Christine and he was killing people who didn't do what he said and he was ready to kill Raoul for being with Christine or for liking Christine, whatever you want to call it, we still sort of had this want and desire for the Phantom and Christine to be together. As weird as it was, you had that inkling they should definitely be together. You wanted the Phantom to end up with a girl. And that's because it was done in such a way that we started to sympathize with the Phantom because we felt sorry for him. He was doing all of this for love, and it was definitely easy to sympathize with him. As big a jump as it is from the Phantom of the Opera to The Walking Dead, let's talk about Negan. And how Negan honestly feels as though he is keeping order and making sure no one gets out of line. Otherwise, bad things will happen, he says. To keep order and keep people alive, he's willing to kill. He's willing to ruin families. He's willing to do the dirty work and be viewed as this awful person in order to do what he feels is absolutely necessary. In all honesty, I feel like even if you don't like zombies or The Walking Dead, the show can actually show you what it is like to create a likable villain. Negan is the most charismatic and enjoyable villain to watch on television. Not only is he a very likable villain, even after he bashes Glenn and Abraham's heads in with Lucille, we still kind of enjoy his long monologues and we enjoy everything he does to the point where we actually start sympathizing with him. We want to know what's under that hard exterior because we know something's there. We know that there is something that made him this way, and he's just doing what he feels is right. It's been said once, it's been said twice, it's been said 1,000,000 times. But just in case you haven't heard it, the villain is the hero in their very own story. What this means is the villain needs to feel they are doing something worthwhile, things that are justified. They might not be going about it in the most morally correct manner, but they are still trying to do something they think will be for the better. Whether it's for their personal gain or for someone else, these people do not have to be purely evil. Give your villains a heart. Give your villains a conscience. These things will help your reader connect with them. And it's absolutely insane if you think your readers shouldn't connect or sympathize with your villains, because we absolutely should. We should be torn against whether or not we want to root for the antagonist or the protagonist. This is not for every single story, but these are the stories that I enjoy. There are purely evil people, there are antagonists that you absolutely hate, but I am talking about the things that I enjoy. I enjoy when I'm torn between the two characters. And lastly, let's go back to The Walking Dead real quick before I end this video. Rick technically is the hero within the show, and definitely within the comics if you read them. He has done some horrible things you wouldn't expect a hero to actually do, but he did them because he was doing it for the betterment of himself and the people around him. But when he murdered the men at the outpost, even though he felt he had to, we have to look at it from Negan's point of view. Rick killed his men for no reason. They just came out of nowhere and just murdered all his people, and they hadn't even posed any danger to Rick or his group at this point. So for Negan, of course he's going to retaliate. It's hard to say whether things would have went the way they did in the show and in the comic if he hadn't have killed the people in the outpost. I guarantee they probably would have, but that's not the point. The point is, Rick sees Negan as the villain, and Negan sees Rick as the villain. This is the most interesting dynamic to have between a protagonist and an antagonist. I definitely root for Rick, but there's times when I really do enjoy Negan on screen. I definitely like him, and I sort of understand where he's coming from. He's trying to keep order in this time of chaos. Yes, Negan is technically the antagonist, but they kind of switched roles, or the roles kind of blurred. The lines definitely blurred, and I think that's a very interesting dynamic to have in a book. And as always, if you have been interested in any of the content I have been offering on this channel, feel free to subscribe so that you get notifications when I post new videos.